to begin, on page 1, there's just a brief little introduction on a lot of the different things psychologists focus on. And some of those things include how we can define psychology in the first place. And the best way to do that is to look at what psychologists focus on in the modern day. Some of the things that are listed here are that some seek the biological correlates of mental events such as sensation, perception, or ideation, which basically means that even though we have mental events, they're trying to look for the biological mechanics behind those events to identify them and better understand how the brain works. Some psychologists concentrate on understanding the principles that govern learning and memory. And typically you see that in cognitive psychology today. And there's a whole spectrum of different rules that go along with learning what the brain does when it comes to learning and memory. Some seek to understand humans by studying non-human animals. This type of psychology, I believe it's called ethology, gets into a very particular assumption, and we'll also learn about that as we continue on in the material. Some seek to study unconscious motivation. Typically, what you'll see with that is Freudian theory or Jungian theory or anything based on Freud's work that came later, like Erikson. Some seek to improve industrial organizational productivity, educational practices, or child rearing practices by utilizing psychological principles. This reflects the point of view of applied psychology, where it's a very utilitarian in that it's only useful to us to understand the mind when it can be applied to an everyday common occurrence amongst people, like child rearing, or how we can make our jobs more efficient and productive based on what's going on in our workers' minds. Some attempt to explain human behavior in terms of evolutionary theory. The first thing that comes to mind when you hear that is Darwin. And that's basically what it focuses on in terms of evolutionary theory. Some attempt to account for individual differences among people in such areas as personality, intelligence, and creativity. There's been a lot of work in a lot of different fields in terms of personality theory. And as you go ahead and take Psych 371, I believe it is, I'm not totally sure, that's the personality class. And interestingly enough, the book for that class was also written by this author. So you'll find a lot of the information presented here also presented there. And if you took that class, you'll find a lot of the information presented there is presented here. Where was I? Some are primarily interested in perfecting therapeutic tools that can be used to help individuals with mental disturbances. So in essence, this focuses on psychiatry and drug administration, or developing new therapeutic techniques. There's still a lot of work with hypnosis being done and other things like that. Some focus on the strategies that people use in adjusting to the environment or in problem solving. So that's basically a reflection on behavior and how people deal with particular issues in their environment, or what approaches they take to solving problems, and how that reflects on their general reactions to certain situations in life. Some study how language develops and how once developed it relates to a variety of cultural activities. I think that has a lot more to do with sociology than psychology, but at its true form, sociology is a form of psychology, and we'll learn more about that in a continuing chapter. Some explore computer programs as models for understanding human thought processes. What that's referencing is information theory, and that's covered under cognitive psychology. We'll learn more about that in chapter 21. Now, this section of the chapter is particularly interesting for me because I had some friends early on in my time here at BYU-Idaho who were taking psychology, but they weren't sure what they wanted to do with it. And they found that some of the things they were learning in the classes that present this information as a particular field, where it focuses on that information being correct, like behavioral learning or cognition or emotion and motivation, where they got a misconception about the way psychology is because of the way that information was presented. And I had one specific friend who changed her major from psychology to sociology because she felt that psychology focused too much on the brain and she wanted to help people. And so I asked her which form of psychology she was learning about, because they all focus on very different things, and I really hope that's one of the things that you can pull away from these tutoring sessions and the class in general, despite whatever learning model your teachers for this class and for other classes are presenting to you.